What's going on, guys? Your man Unspoken Reviews back again with another video, and we are going to be reviewing another episode of X-Men 97, Episode 8, Tolerance's Extinction, Part 1. All right, so I gotta say, this episode did a great job of setting up just the stakes and each of the characters' motivations, what some are fighting for, what some believe they're fighting for. And I feel like that is a really cool thing that it did. It's something that, you don't really see very much in television shows, especially when television shows are coming to their end. It kind of feels like you just get these abrupt, finales as opposed to that buildup. And we kind of got a clear picture of what the X-Men are trying to prevent, what Bastion is fighting to make happen, how everybody feels in the middle, even other individuals and their motivations, they're just fleshed out perfectly. And it kind of creates this darkest before the dawn type of mentality coming up to the end of the series. And I gotta say, I love this episode. It was pretty good. Like I said, it just set up that the overall premise of what it is we're coming to ahead with the show. So when we open up, we open up with Cable and Scott and just the Summers family dynamic. Him and Scott are not talking. Cable's just trying to keep that distance. Mind you, Scott has been kind of like a far off memory for Cable for a very, very long time. Since he was a baby, Scott hasn't been there, so it kind of creates this difficult or this awkward energy around the two of them, which I can completely understand. But, Gene tries to constantly encourage Scott to try to, be the best he can. And Scott is kind of upset because he realizes he didn't really take the time to learn from the professor before he was gone. And it kind of creates an issue, and I understood where that was coming from. We also find out that Bishop disappeared somewhere in the time stream. I guess he kind of vanished, and, Cable hasn't seen him or seen any side of him since that time that he disappeared. And, we jump to, Cable explaining exactly what happened and what happened to the mutants in his future. And it turns out that Xavier's dream did kind of come true, just not in the way they imagined, where mutants are kind of treated like slave labor. They're kind of used as the backbone of humanity, creating bridges, being able to fix certain issues that would take months for humans to complete, like building a building. It's become easier with mutants and using their talents and their gifts as tools. And despite the fact that it, gives them a place to stay, it kind of just treats them like slaves, And we also found out that Bastion was using Cable's techno virus to enhance Sentinels and make them stronger to the point where, they're able to now mimic mutant abilities. To now mutants are becoming less important and less needed in society, to where they're being wiped out. And we also get a Comatage reference as Cable is trying to explain, or Cable's computer is trying to explain, that they can't stop Genosha from happening. It's something that has to happen. It's a fixed point in time. Beast references Comatage because they reference that the Mystics exist in this universe, which we know because Doctor Strange was in the same universe with Spider-Man, that Genosha is a fixed point. It can't be taken away. It can't be scrubbed free. It's just in this point in time, it has to happen, and it's something that is affecting, Cable, because he sees his mom's last moments. Even Gene kind of feels his last moments. And it's also kind of messed up because Bastion ends up releasing Xavier's whereabouts to kind of create to humanity that they've been lied to about Xavier, that perhaps it was a setup all along to create certain imbalances in the world and give the X-Men more of an edge, I guess, or give Magneto more of an edge. And despite this, the mutants still feel that they have to figure out a way to stop Bastion. Scott has his way of doing it, but him and Cable just can't seem to get along with the idea of what it costs. Scott has a point with the reconnaissance, but Cable has a point with just getting the job done. And we get kind of a really interesting scene next where Jean is trying to help, a very comatose Rogue who's been injured after the fight with the Trash Sentinel. She kind of remembers all of Madeline's memories. She remembers giving birth to Cable, being pregnant with Cable, holding him for the first time, being with Scott, the memories of all the different X-Men that Madeline built throughout the years, she feels all those because of the psychic connection between them and the closeness of their bond from, you know, Madeline being her clone. And whoever wrote Kurt's lines, you did a fantastic job, because I love when Kurt says his lines have just been fire every single time he's been in the scene, where he says, you know, blood is blood, but family is a choice. And he talks about how even though Mystique didn't want him and Rogue could have been enemies but became family. You know, Val Cooper, we also found out, has been aligned with both Bastion and Sinister, and she, you know, was unaware of how Genosha would happen. But Bastion ends up explaining to her that if I had did that, you know, you would have felt worse, you know, for what has to happen. You know, he explains about the Sentinels and what he is doing to create them, and you know, that they've become sleeper cells. Like, they don't even remember what's happening to them. But he feels that his ideas are necessary. I like that that is something that we get with Bastion, that he is very committed to what he's after. And that is something that you don't really get with villains very much. You know, being able to understand, you know, the way that humanity changes throughout time, it makes us wonder, are we going to be too advanced for us, that we're going to need something to put us in our places? And he kind of explains that. We also get a cool scene where we're also getting more of his backstory as, you know, Scott, Jean, and Cable are going to Bastion's childhood home. And it's also very kind of sad, because as Jean is able to touch some of the pictures, she's able to see his past and his memories, you know, seeing how he grew up. We also found out that, you know, he could hear machines talking. He could hear like clocks and telephone poles. And we also kind of get more deep into his past, where we found out Nimrod was able to infect Bastion's father and take control of him, and even get him to a point where he was able to meet his mother, and he was able to get pregnant with him. And the fact that Bastion is a long line from the Sentinels, from Master Mode all the way to Nimrod. You know, he was born not just a machine, but he was born as a human. And we also kind of get another interesting cameo where we get Doom and Zemo. And I actually found that kind of interesting, because even Doom is saying that he does not support everything that Bastion is doing. And you got to be a pretty bad dude in order to get Doom to be like, hey man, this is a bit much for me, you know. But Zemo is also making a point where as long as the president aligns with the X-Men, you're never fully going to win. And, you know, Bastion doesn't even see this as an issue, you know. At that very next scene, you know, we start to see the Sentinels start to change. And I don't know how anybody was surprised about Bastion's mom. I knew that was coming, because she seemed absolutely too calm. But I like the contortion and the bones breaking and changing and moving around. And as she's changing, we also found out the entire town has been changed by Bastion. You know, we see multiple human beings at stores and malls, at the X-Mansion. All of them changing. You know, Jubilee and Roberto get attacked by, you know, Roberto's butler at the mall. You know, you start to see all of the humans that are at the X-Mansion that are, you know, out there with their signs transforming and changing. It's not everybody, but most of them are changing. And it just goes to show just how much Bastion has been at work at this since he's gotten old enough to understand what he's after. You know, we also found another transformation from Tilby, who was kind of the friend of Beast, and she transforms, and it was kind of dark just seeing how close she got to him, to the point where he didn't know that. You know, he's completely caught off guard, and seeing Beast get thrown around like that, where he has absolutely no chance against these things, it's pretty wild, you know, to see how strong they are. We also get a pretty awesome fight scene with Logan. You know, Logan is taking him out, trying to, you know, put all the Sentinels down. I like the great falling out of the sky scene where he's just cutting up Sentinels left and right. And even though both Morph and Kurt are taken out for the moment, Kurt returns, and I like that, you know, he kind of dons the sword. He's got two in his hands, and he's got one on his tail. And I like the scene where he's like, you know, the Sentinel's like, why do you continue to fight? And Logan's like, I got 6 reasons why. And Kurt's like, nah, 9. And I was like, oh snap. And it was a pretty awesome combo fight scene, watching those two take out the Sentinels. And at the same time, we're getting Summers going against the Sentinels as well. You know, we get a pretty cool scene where, you know, Jean is still kind of taking on that motherly bond, trying to protect Cable. And they realize that the Blackbird can't be saved. I think it's like the 3rd Blackbird getting taken out. And I like that Jean referenced that in the episodes, like, you know, Beast is going to be pissed at you about this. But, you know, they make it out of the plane in time with the actual Porsche, and, you know, they're flying through. And I like the kind of like the warm family scene between them when Scott's like, you don't screw with the Summers. And, the kind of smile between him and Jean, showing that they might be getting back to where they were. Bastion ends up going to, the X-Mansion to enjoy the spoils of war and the fact that he's, been successful with his mission. He actually gets a call from Sinister explaining that, Val has actually released Magneto. But Bastion doesn't seem that shocked about this. In fact, he's barely even worried about it at all. And we get kind of a pretty cool voiceover scene where, Val is, had a point that when she released Magneto, nobody was shocked about the genocide that took place in Genosha. Nobody was upset about it. Nobody looked, scared. And I've always kind of found it interesting, this point where Magneto has always been the one to understand where humans go, but Professor X has always been the one to understand what the potential that we're capable of. But at the end of the day, Magneto is freed by Val Cooper, and she deems that, Magneto was right. And, we get a pretty cool scene where the Master of Magnetism goes to the very northern point of the planet and uses his magnetic abilities to pretty much, mess up the magnetic field of the planet to where he cuts out all power. All the Sentinels start falling out of the sky. We get some pretty cool cameo scenes real quick from, the Silver Samurai, we get Omega Red, and then we got the Spider-Man cameo, which I almost fell out of my seat at, because I know that there was a possibility we'd get to see him, but, we don't get any words from him. But just the fact that he is still active in this universe, he's still moving around, doing what Spider-Man does. But, I don't want to get off topic, but it was such a pretty cool scene, getting all these cameos to show everyone is being affected by what Magneto is about to do. And even Wolverine says that he has just declared war on humanity. And at the same time, Professor Xavier returns, a pretty cool warming scene at the very end where he says, "To me, my X-Men." And you get to see, as he's reaching out with his mind, everybody is kind of shocked to see he's back, but surprised and happy at the same time. And I can't wait to see where the last two parts of this go forward. I'm enjoying the series so far. I'm actually kind of sad to see it's coming to an end. I know they have season 2 of season 3 getting ready to set up already, but it's just been a really good wild ride, and getting to see how it's set up, how well the show has done. So I can't wait to see what happens next. I'm excited to see, my predictions is, first and foremost, I think Val Cooper is Mystique. It makes sense. So far in the series, I haven't seen those two really, cross paths in the X-Men animated series. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't really seen them cross paths. And it would not surprise me if Val Cooper was indeed Mystique, that she started to understand that Magneto was indeed right about the way he goes about things, and that it's time to follow his lead in the scenario. I think in part 2, it's going to be about the mutants trying to stop, just Bastion overall. And that's going to include the X-Men and the Brotherhood, all of them coming together to stop Bastion. And I think by part 3, it's going to be the X-Men trying to stop Magneto. I'm not certain, but I cannot wait to see where it goes. Those are just my predictions. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I did. And thank you so much for just tuning in. Please like and comment on what was your favorite moment of the episode. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.